the song over and over and over again said, just come. Just come. And how do we get to come? Just as we are. Just as we are. I love that. The choir didn't say, come to my God. They said, come to your God. And how amazing it is that we worship here a God that says to each and every one of us that we are worthy, that we are welcomed, that there's nothing we could do to ever make God not love us. And that is the truth of spirituality, right? That each one of us has a path to walk with a loving God. Not a God that places on us definitions or this is the way you have to do it. Because, people like me are just going to say, oh, really? That's the way I have to do it? Watch this. But God accepts us as we are. And I think one more time, we struggle with this in our sacred text. This sacred text is, again, a takeoff on last week, where we talked about God's blessing is for us at every intersection of our lives. That we don't have a litany of things we have to do first. We inherit God's blessings simply because of who God wants to be and who God is in our lives. I love it. This week, 6 people came into my office. 4 were unannounced. They just came in and, this is when I know it's going to be good. When people come in and they'll say, Pastor, how are you doing today? Or, they'll check things out and then they make their way into my office and then they sit in one of the chairs and then I say to them, oh, would you like for me to close the door or is it okay to leave it open? And they'll say, you might want to close it. And I'm like, okay, here we go, right? But it was wonderful that people came in to talk with me about how can you say that God blesses us at every intersection with our lives? Because I have experienced such pain. And then people just talked. They just talked. And one person said it so well. They said, and as I have experienced this amazing, overwhelming pain or disappointment or fear in my life, I have learned over time that I have been defining myself by the pain, the fear, the disappointment, the rejection. And if I don't even have that, what do I have? And the only response to that is maybe it's time that God is telling you that God will partner with you in breaking down those walls so that you can receive all of the blessings that God has for you. So that one step at a time, one layer at a time, just as we peel an onion, one layer at a time, you can begin to experience the goodness that God has for you, even though you experience pain, rejection, and brokenness. And one person said, well, I am just outdone. And I was so grateful to hear that, because it is as we wrestle with Scripture, as we wrestle with thoughts of love and kindness, that we allow ourselves to be real before God, and God has an opportunity to come in and help us with the pain and all the things that have caused us to have a definition other than the beloved of God, just the way we are. And so then today we come to this text where Jesus says, you are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. And I can imagine it's even harder to imagine that you would bring, some of you would be having difficulty imagining, well, how am I going to bring salt? Why do I have to be salt? Right? Well, how am I going to bring light to the world? Think about salt for a minute. Often when I'm cooking, and I don't follow recipes, so Kirk's always fearful of what the end result is going to be. But I don't use salt very often because I have high blood pressure. Imagine why. But what I know about salt is I'll often tell Bubba or Robin, who's ever in the kitchen, you might want to add some salt in there, because what does salt do? When you stir salt in, it makes the flavors come out, right? And so let's think about that for a minute. That Jesus is saying, you are the salt of the earth. You matter. Your life will bring light and bring the flavors of other people's lives together. Ooh, now there's a thought, right? Or you are the light of the world. You wouldn't build a great church on a hill called MCC Richmond and then hide that church, would you now? No. We want to open the doors and let people in. We want to go out into our community to strut our glitter, knowing that it is God that is in that glitter. God gives us that glitter, and God makes a difference in our lives, and we want to share that with others, right? If that's, for some, that is difficult to believe, that God would say that you are valuable enough. Your experiences will be a blessing to someone else. And as you share those experiences and other people's lives get better, your life will even be better, because you will see the fruit of what you and God did for somebody else. And that's how we take care of ourselves. Right? But the question about this sacred text is that it goes on. And if you're looking for an out, you'll say, oh, well, here it is. Jesus says, if salt loses its saltiness, does it have purpose? Right? If you hide your light under a bushel, what happens then? Well, let's think about that a little bit. Maybe these are just images that Jesus wants to give us. Because does salt ever lose its saltiness? It doesn't matter if it's a big pile of salt or a little grain of salt. Salt is salt. But what does it do? When it loses its flavor, when it loses its saltiness, it disappears. Light, if you put it under a bushel, what's going to happen? It can't be seen. Isn't it going to go out? Or worse yet, start a big old fire? And then, Lord have mercy, there's a lot of light. Could this just not be imagery for us to understand that when we choose or when we want to shut God out, when we cannot believe that we are worthy of God's love, that it's in those moments that we walk away from God. Never does God walk away from us, but that we walk away from God and we temporarily lose opportunity to make a difference in this world. We lose an opportunity to make a difference in somebody else's life. Now, I cannot believe that is 100% true. And the reason I can't believe it is that I understand what it means to feel unworthy, to be rejected, to be at the bottom of the ladder, because I have been there. And my experience was that God made God's self known to me in ways that I could not deny. So when we say in our mission statement and in our core values of what we believe that God meets us where we are, and God accepts us for who we are all the time, not some of the time. And could it be that God understands when we are feeling bankrupt? That God understands when we are experiencing pain and brokenness? Could it be that God only wants us to rely on each other and community so that we are reminded that we are loved, we are reminded that God will never forsake us, that we are reminded that we are good because the God within us says so. And that, my friends, is what liberty is all about. That's what hope is all about. That's what relying on God is all about. We just have to dare to believe. And even when we can't believe, that we can believe for somebody else. That we stand in the gap to remind people that they are loved. The issue, I think, is that we realize when we think that we are not worthy, that we are not good enough, is because we really know the core of our behavior. We really know the core of our thoughts. We really know us really well. Well, I have some good and bad news for you this morning. You may think you know yourself, but the God who created you knows you better. And the God who created you wants to give you better. And the God who created you says that you are worthy. The God who created you says that together with God, you can go through anything that this world would throw at you. And I believe that we are living at a time when we need to make that belief. That God accepts us as we are. That God meets us where we are. Because we live in a world that would tell us something different. We live in a world that's not about grace. We live in a world where people wanted us to remember that it's okay to distinguish who's in and who's out. It's okay to tell people they cannot cross our borders. It's okay to treat immigrants poorly. We live in a world that our government says it's okay to separate children from their families. We live in a world where healthcare is an issue. We live in a world where people don't deserve the same freedoms because of who they are. But God says, you do deserve all of it and more. And why is that? Because you are the beloved of God just the way you are. And I think it's imperative that we look at the sacred text and what is the underlying thing that Jesus says at the end of the sacred text? Is that the beloved of God need to be about justice, right? And it's as we fight for justice that we will see the world differently. If you want a good example of what it looks like to be the salt of the earth, I implore you to Google any of the women's marches. I encourage you to look at the marches for our lives and the gathering where youth were fighting for safety in their schools against gun violence. I would encourage you to Google and look at any of the resistance movements because these are people that got active. They didn't wait for a time that was convenient, right? They got busy. There were people who made a stand by standing for justice. And as I marched in that first women's march, I was blown away to see thousands of people with us in Washington, D.C. That there were so many people that were standing to make a difference in the world that we could barely move. And then when we heard that not only was it in Washington, D.C., but worldwide, these are people that got active. And why did they get active? Because they could. There were some of us that were called nasty. And they had no idea that people at MCC would see that as a badge of honor to be called nasty for showing up at a protest and helping people understand that they are loved by God, that they deserve to be treated fairly. And sometimes I think we need to be reminded that nasty sometimes is the same as holiness, God's holiness. And don't let me confuse you. I'm not saying that nasty behavior just to be nasty and self-centered is appropriate. But when we stand for God's justice, God's truth of love, and God's transforming love and hope, then sometimes we're going to be defined as nasty, and that is a holy experience. So it's in our being willing to be active that we can also see these opportunities as times of prayer, of times when we put ourselves on the line, where God pushes us into getting active and busy so that others might hear the good news that they are loved and valued, and they deserve to be treated with grace and love just the way they are. On many levels, we are a congregation that is learning just to do that. We are a congregation that doesn't sit around and let things just happen, right? We're a congregation that believes in getting busy to help one another. That's why we make it a point to bring in shoes for children that may not have those shoes, so that they can start school feeling good about themselves. And I say, what else can we do to remind them when those shoes get worn out? What else can we do to help these children know that they are valuable and deserve to be living in conditions that are grace-filled and love-filled? Each and every week, we serve 3 meals here at this church. Good meals, too, even when I cook. We are people who say that no one should go hungry, that people should feel welcome to come as they are, just as they are, to get a meal, where people know that they can be treated with respect and that they are loved simply for the sake that they are human and deserve to be loved. People that we say do not have to look like us, act like us, or even smell like us. But God's justice says that we deserve to treat one another with kindness and respect and love. I love what's happening at the lounge each and every week. I love it. This week it was pouring down rain. And so I went and opened the elevator early. And I was grateful that it was about 11:30 or so when I unlocked the elevator, that there was nobody in line, right? And so then I thought, people may not know that we're open, so let me unlock the door too. And then I loved what Tigger said when she came in. She goes, "Oh, I'm so glad that the door is unlocked so people can come out of the rain." Tigger didn't have to wonder why the doors were unlocked or why the elevator was unlocked. She knew that they were unlocked so that people didn't have to stand out in the rain. And as people came in, one at a time, they thanked us as they were dripping wet, right? Wrap your brain around that we were thanked simply for unlocking the door and treating people with kindness. And as they sat around tables, we encouraged them to get coffee. We encouraged them to watch the TV. What did you show this with, Sean? Three Stooges. Oh, Lord. You should have seen people laughing. It was absolutely unbelievable. And a couple people were like, "That's you, Holmes. That's you, Holmes." Right? That means that's you, buddy. But I loved it. And then somebody came in and said to me, "Is there something I could do?" I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, there is something you can do." So we created a space in the hallway for this individual to put together a cart so that the clothing that you donate can be easily seen, so that it can be easily rolled out for people to take whatever they need. And this individual felt like $1,000,000 and thanked me over and over and over again for giving him something that he could do. And you know what? He didn't just do it by himself. He went and got a friend who comes to the lounge to come in, and together they read the directions and they figured out how to make this cart come together. And then at the end, when it was all together, they came and said, "We want to show you what we've done. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. That's what it means to be salt. That somebody else who makes a choice just to come to the church, to get out of the rain, can feel like $1,000,000 by putting a cart together. And then they took it out to Tigger, and Tigger, oh my goodness, she was like doing somersaults. Because she knew the blessing that that cart would bring for people to come just look at clothes. Again, this is what it means to be salt of the earth. This is what it means to be the light of the world. This is why on a Super Bowl Sunday, this congregation brings in 400 plus cans of food for the food bank. And might I add to that, I know that some of you who brought in cans are feeling bad about yourself. Some of you, your life is in a position where you question God, where you question what's going on, and yet you still bring in cans. You still show up. On Wednesday night, I loved it. Philip, who's doing a wonderful job. You don't want to miss the 4th session of his series this coming Wednesday. Philip is doing a great job getting people to engage in the ministries of this church through the mission, vision, and what we believe here. It was wonderful. And he looked at this, our vision statement, loving God by caring for and serving others. And then Carol said something that was brilliant, and I had to just sit and not say anything. You know, it's like one of those, no, Philip is leading, I can't say anything, but you know I wanted to. Carol said that she thinks that it's interesting that the focus is on others, and yet we cannot forget to take care of ourselves. And then Philip said, isn't it perhaps that it's in taking care of others that we are indeed taking care of ourselves? Because if we don't know how to take care of ourselves, how can we take care of others? This is what it means. This is what it means, people, to be salt of the earth, to be the light of the world, is simply to make a difference in one another's lives. And we do that by you securing a pastor full-time that can meet with people in my office and have these theological debates. It's not about agreeing with me, but it is in having the conversation. I encourage you, try to change my mind. Kirk will tell you it's hopeless, right? But what can we do for one another? And there are times that I'm just wiped out because I hear about what we have done in helping other people grow and helping other people be loved. Yesterday, I got a thank you card. I cannot begin to read to you the letter that was inside this card. So I've asked Carol to do that because, you know, I'm a crybaby at the best of things. But this letter wiped me out. I took it home and I said to Kirk, read this. I got to go upstairs. And he was dumbfounded yet one more time to see the things that we do just because we do them, how they bring blessing to others' lives. So Carol, please read this letter. Before she does, I want you to know that there was a pastor who came to see me because he was not understanding his son. And he realized that he needed help. Thank God he came. And then I got to meet the son.
Hi, Pastor Kenny. Today is my birthday, and I wanted to let you know I am doing well. I'm finishing my first semester at the University of Virginia and totally enjoying my classes. I'm living on my own with a roommate. We do some things together, but mostly spend time working, studying, and attending class. I want you to know that I think a lot about the time you spent with me and Dad. You helped us to learn to listen to each other, even though we don't understand each other. I love my dad so much. Instead of trying to fix me, I think he's beginning to see how happy I am and leave it at that. Mom has not come that far. I do talk with her at least once a week. I keep hearing you tell Dad that I am not broken, but instead telling the truth about who I am. I keep hearing you tell me I am brave to share myself with the world instead of hiding. I'm learning more and more how to love myself. Some days are tough, but I keep working at it. I still don't understand how God loves me just the way I am, and wonder a lot if there is a God. I guess the fact that I'm still here says something about that. Please thank your church for the hugs and smiles they gave me. They meant a lot. I was so afraid, but they helped me and let me be myself. I've even given hugs to other transgender people I've met. We go out and spend a lot of time together and have a lot of fun. I never thought I could be myself, but my friends helped me. Your church helped me realize I could live. I'll be back in a few months. Thanks for helping me.
Thank you, Leslie. That's what it means to be the salt of the earth. That's what it means to be the light of the world. And one person at a time, one city at a time, one world at a time, we will make the difference as we let the God within us come out. And I say I will never, ever stand and be silent when marginalization or oppression happens in any form. And I encourage you to be the same. I will seek, as long as I'm the pastor here, to teach you and to show you how to do that, so that when we walk out, every youth that's transgender will know that they are welcomed here. Every homeless person would be treated with the respect that they deserve. Every person within this church that goes through an experience that they feel alone, that they don't have to be alone, that we will listen instead of making judgment, and that we will teach people that they are not broken, but they are celebrated for being holy because they are creations of God, that we are all the beloved of God just the way we are. And we will share these experiences. The reason I know it is because God has turned my life upside down from the inside out. And I know and believe the same is true for others. So let's embrace being the salt of the earth, the light of the world. And look out, Richmond, because here we come. Amen. Amen.